I didn't plan to tell this story, not because it's painful, but because it still feels unbelievable in that quiet, heavy way reality sometimes hits you. You think you understand how unfair a workplace can be, and then one day they hand you proof printed on company letterhead. If you've ever spent months holding a collapsing project together with nothing but caffeine, duct tape, and the last pieces of your sanity, you'll understand why this still sits under my ribs like a bruise. For almost 8 months, I lived inside that deal. The $134 million partnership everyone upstairs kept calling transformative, historic, game-changing, all the words people use when they're not the ones doing the actual work. My coworker Nate loved repeating those phrases. He used them in meetings, in hallways, in casual kitchen chats, while heating up his vegan lunches. Nate liked talking about the deal. I liked building it. That was the difference. I was the one waking up to 4 a.m. emails from the European division asking for revised projections. I was the one rewriting the financial model after a senior VP accidentally deleted half the sheets. I was the one who got on 3 back-to-back calls on Christmas Eve because the client's legal team wanted one paragraph reformulated for clarity. And when the numbers cracked, when the client hesitated, when something smelled even a little unstable, everyone looked at me, quietly, expectantly, like a child waiting for an adult to fix the thing they broke. Nate? Nate showed up to the victory laps, the presentations, the polished summaries. He was good at being visible. Charming, loud, great hair. Took credit like a man who believed the universe had placed him on Earth to be applauded. I don't blame him for being who he is. I blame myself for letting the company frame us as equals. The week before the deal closed, I slept maybe 10 hours total. My apartment turned into a graveyard of half-finished meal containers and sticky notes. I remember standing in the shower one morning, forehead against the tile, telling myself, just survive today. Nothing else exists. I know burnout when I see it. I just didn't have the option to collapse. If I fell, the entire contract fell with me. Management made that clear without ever saying it out loud. Closing day felt surreal. I should have been relieved, happy even. But something in me had already emptied out. We signed, we smiled. We posed for a picture someone later posted on the company's internal newsletter with the caption, Team Triumph. Congratulations to Nate for his exceptional leadership. Leadership. I had to reread that word twice. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. The impact mattered. The result mattered. The fact that I had just secured one of the biggest wins in the company's history mattered. And then came the awards meeting. We were all gathered in the conference room. HR had set out cheap cookies. The VP of Operations was smiling like he had personally lifted the numbers by hand. Nate sat beside me with that relaxed confidence of someone who'd already rehearsed being praised. I kept telling myself not to expect too much. Maybe a bonus, maybe a raise, maybe at least a thank you that sounded like it came from a real human being. They called Nate first. Our rising star, the VP said, beaming. Your leadership during this project has proven you're ready for the next level. Congratulations on your promotion to Senior Strategy Manager. He stood, shook hands, accepted his applause. A few people clapped way too loudly. Nate winked at me like this was some private joke we were both in on. I didn't wink back. Then they called my name. I stood because everyone was looking. The VP gave me a tight smile, the kind you give someone at a funeral when you don't know what else to say. And for your dedication and team spirit, we want to offer a symbolic gesture of appreciation. He handed me an envelope. Thin, light, too light. I opened it. Inside was a card with the company logo and a check for $1. $1. Not metaphorical, not printed as a keepsake. A real cashable check. I heard someone laugh under their breath. Someone else muttered, "No way." Nate looked at me with this awkward, pitying smile, like even he couldn't believe they'd gone that far. I felt nothing. Not anger, not humiliation, just the cold, clean clarity of a final answer. The VP clapped me on the shoulder. It's a symbolic award. Shows teamwork matters more than individual ego. I said nothing, because if I opened my mouth right then, they'd fire me for what would come out. I sat down slowly, put the envelope on the table, pressed my thumb against the edge until the paper cut into my skin. Pain helped me stay still. They moved on, casual, indifferent, as if a man hadn't just been told his value was $1. But here's the thing I didn't know yet. This wasn't the insult. This was only the spark. The real story, the story of everything that came crashing down afterward, had only just begun. But that was just the beginning. I realized that the moment I walked out of that conference room and watched Nate shaking hands, like he'd just won an Oscar. People congratulated him with the kind of energy you reserve for someone who saved a burning building. A few of them gave me polite nods, the kind you give a stranger who held the door for you. Back at my desk, the $1 check sat next to my keyboard, like a joke no one wanted to claim. I tried to bury myself in tasks, but quiet humiliation has a way of filling the room, taking up air, sticking to your hands when you type. Every email I answered felt like a reminder that I had spent 8 months holding up a structure the company credited to someone else. Around lunchtime, my manager, Karen, stopped by my desk. She leaned on the partition with that PR-friendly smile she used when she needed something unpleasant to sound noble. "I hope you're not disappointed," she said lightly. "About which part?" I asked, still typing. "The symbolic award," she clarified. "We didn't want to create tension by highlighting individual contributors. Nate is stepping into a leadership role, and it's important to reinforce unity." Unity? Right. Unity meant he got the promotion, and I got a coupon for a vending machine item. "I appreciate the clarity," I said, because I didn't trust myself to say anything else. Karen nodded like I'd passed some emotional maturity exam. "We'll have more opportunities in the future. Just keep being a team player." I didn't answer. She took the silence as acceptance and walked away. That afternoon, Nate strutted over to my desk, a cup of cold brew in hand. He leaned on my monitor like we were two buddies in a sitcom. "Hey man, rough meeting, huh? But look, promotions are political. You know how it goes. Anyway, I'll need you to put together a revised forecasting model by tomorrow morning. The director wants to see something more visionary." His words. My fingers froze on the keyboard. He continued, oblivious. "Oh, and fix that discrepancy in the Q4 sheet. I mentioned you'd handle it." Of course he did. Something inside me tightened, but it didn't snap. Not yet. "Send me the details," I said quietly. "Attaboy." He clapped my shoulder like he owned the place and walked away. The rest of the day was a blur of unspoken frustration and the quiet grind of doing work that would never have my name on it. I stayed late, again because someone had to. By the time I left, the office lights were dim, and the city outside felt colder than usual. At home, I opened my laptop to finish the forecasting model. Notifications popped up instantly. One from Nate, one from Karen, and one from an email address I didn't recognize. The subject line stopped me, cold. Regarding the partnership, attention, my name. It was from the client's VP of development, the man who had grilled me for weeks during the negotiations, the one who sent 3 a.m. requests without apologies. He wasn't friendly, but he respected competence, and he paid attention. I opened the email. "Thank you again for your diligence throughout this process. We would like to continue working directly with you moving forward. Your clarity and reliability were the deciding factors in the final approval. Please confirm your availability for an ongoing point of contact role." I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't praise, it wasn't flattery, it was recognition from the only people whose opinion actually mattered. My chest felt tight in a different way now. Not painful, more like waking up after being underwater too long. 5 minutes later, Karen forwarded the same email to me with a note. "Please loop Nate in on all future communication. He will serve as the face of this partnership." The face. Right. I stared at her message, The speed of it, the entitlement in it, and the logic that kept me in line for months evaporated. No anger, no shaking hands, just clarity. For the first time, I saw exactly how this game was rigged. They didn't just undervalue me. They needed me quiet, invisible, replaceable. As long as I kept saving the company, they could keep feeding me scraps. That night, something shifted. That night, I stopped being the hero. Because heroes fix things. Heroes forgive. Heroes keep pushing even when it tears them apart. I wasn't going to die of that anymore. I drafted a calm, professional reply to the client. I'm available to continue as your primary contact. Please let me know the schedule that works best. Then intentionally, I did not CC Nate. I did not CC Karen. I did not CC the company alias that Nate proudly labeled leadership team. I just sent it. When I closed the laptop, the apartment felt different. Quieter, cleaner, like the air had cleared around me. The truth settled into place slowly, like dust finding its way to the floor. They didn't promote me because they couldn't afford to acknowledge how dependent they were on me. So I made a decision, not dramatic, not angry, just final. I wasn't going to lift anything I didn't get credit for, not one more spreadsheet, not one more late-night call, not one more ounce of invisible labor to make someone else look like a genius. What I didn't know yet was that this one choice, this tiny, silent refusal, would crack the entire structure they'd built on my back. Because when you pull support out of a building, it doesn't fall right away. It tilts, it creaks, it shifts, and eventually it collapses. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. The shift didn't happen overnight. It started quietly, the way storms begin, with air that feels a little too still. For the first time in months, I worked only on what I was directly assigned. No quick fixes, no can you take a look. No cleaning up the messes Nate left behind like breadcrumbs. If a task wasn't formally mine, it stayed where it landed. The first crack showed up on Monday morning. The client replied to my email asking for a follow-up meeting. They addressed it directly to me, personally, using my first name, not the corporate alias. My inbox pinged with their availability. Clear, simple, respectful. Not a single mention of Nate. 2 minutes later, Karen messaged me. Please forward all client communication to Nate for visibility. I didn't respond. Not out of rebellion, just because I was done pretending their rules made sense. Instead, I kept the conversation with the client professional and focused. The meeting went well. They wanted updates, projections, clarifications, all things I could provide in minutes because I'd built the project from the ground up. By lunchtime, Nate stormed over to my desk. "Bro, what are you doing?" he hissed, voice low but shaking. "Karen says the client emailed you directly. Why didn't you loop me in?" I looked at him calmly, because I'm the one they reached out to. "That doesn't mean you get to go rogue," he snapped. "I'm leading this partnership." "You're the face," I said evenly, "not the foundation." He blinked, thrown off by the bluntness. "The hell does that mean?" "It means you can't lead something you don't understand." For a second I thought he might actually swing at me. Instead, he stepped back, face red, and muttered, "Karen's going to deal with this." And she tried. That afternoon, she called me into a meeting room with the blinds half closed, like we were negotiating a hostage release. "You're undermining our structure," she said. "Nate needs to be included in every communication." "I'm responding to the client," I said. "You asked me to prioritize them. I'm doing that." "You know what I mean," she pressed. "You're making him look unprepared." "He is unprepared," I replied. "That's not my doing." Silence. Longer than she intended. Longer than she could hide. She knew I was right. She just couldn't say it. "Look," she tried again, softer now. "Let's not make this difficult. You and Nate work great together." "No," I corrected. "I worked." He watched. Her jaw clenched. "This attitude isn't productive." "I'm not here to be productive," I said. "Not for free." Her expression froze. She wasn't expecting that. When I walked out of that room, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, like someone who had finally stepped off a treadmill he never noticed was running. The chaos started 2 days later. The client sent a formal request for clarification on 3 deliverables. Instead of going through the company, alias, they sent it directly to me again, this time copying 3 senior executives. And then they added one sentence that detonated the entire building. We would prefer if all future communications came directly from my name, as he is the only one who has demonstrated consistent accuracy. That was the moment. Everything tilted. Karen called me into a second meeting. This one bigger. HR. A director. Nate sitting stiff in the corner like he wanted to disappear into the drywall. The director cleared his throat. We've noticed you're creating bottlenecks. By responding to emails, I asked. By isolating yourself from the team, he corrected. The team, I repeated slowly. Or Nate. His eye twitched. This isn't about individuals. It's entirely about individuals, I said. Specifically the one you promoted. Nate stood, voice cracking. You're trying to make me look incompetent. You're doing that yourself, I replied quietly. He went silent. Everyone did. The director inhaled sharply, the way people do before they say something rehearsed. We need alignment, and we need you to stop presenting yourself as the sole owner of this deal. I stared at him. I'm not presenting myself as anything. The client knows who did the work. He exhaled, defeated. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I whispered. I'm making it honest. When I left the room, the hallway felt different. Not because I'd won, I hadn't. It was because I watched them realize, one by one, that they'd built their future on a man they assumed would stay quiet forever. The next morning, everything cracked open. The client sent a message, not to me individually, this time to the entire leadership team. Please note, we will not proceed with the next phase of this partnership unless my name remains the primary point of contact. His expertise is essential. In corporate language, that was a gun to the head. Nate looked like someone had unplugged his soul. Karen went pale. The director stared at the screen like it personally betrayed him. No one said my name out loud, but the silence screamed it. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I just stopped holding the roof up. And they finally felt what the building weighed. And then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning, early enough that half the office was still fumbling with their coffee lids. I was at my desk, answering a routine logistics question from the client, when the conference room across the hall, filled with people much higher on the ladder than they usually climbed before noon. Their voices weren't loud, but the tension bled through the glass. Tight movements, forced smiles, the brittle kind of whispering you hear before a verdict. 10 minutes later, Karen called me in. She didn't meet my eyes. We received a message from the client. I already knew which one. She slid her tablet forward. It displayed a formal notice from their legal team. Moving forward, all project direction must go through my name. If his role is removed or diminished, we will reevaluate the continuation of this agreement. Not a request, not a suggestion. A line in concrete. Karen exhaled. They're tying the deal to you personally. I waited. We need you to reassure them, she continued. Tell them you'll stay. Commit publicly. Help us stabilize this. There it was. The sentence they never thought they'd have to say. I looked around the room. The director watching me like I was a malfunctioning machine he hoped to reboot. HR pretending to smile. Nate chewing the inside of his cheek, unable to even fake confidence. For months, they treated me like a replaceable part. Now they were asking me to hold the building steady while they scrambled to fix everything collapsing around them. No, I said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Karen blinked twice. No. What? No, I repeated. I'm not committing to anything. The director straightened in his chair. Be reasonable. I was reasonable, I said. For 8 months. You're jeopardizing the deal, he warned. It was never yours, I answered. Silence spread across the room, heavy and undeniable. They couldn't argue with the truth, not anymore. They'd built their future on the assumption that I wouldn't walk away, but they never asked what would happen if I did. Later that afternoon, I drafted my resignation. 2 paragraphs. Professional. Clean. No emotion. No accusation. No stories. Just a timestamp and a signature. Before sending it to HR, I emailed the client. I will be transitioning out of my current company. If you wish to continue working with me, I'll provide updated contact details once my new structure is formalized. Their reply came 8 minutes later. We will follow you. Please notify us once your new entity is established. No hesitation, no confusion, just clarity. At 4:12 p.m., I hit send on my resignation. At 4:19, the director appeared at my desk. You can't walk out like this, he said quietly, as if keeping his voice down could stop anything. You're sabotaging the entire company. I'm leaving, I said. What happens next is just consequences. He looked at me with something sharp. Fear, maybe, or the sudden realization that his title meant nothing without the work I'd been doing behind the curtain. You're making a mistake, he said. I closed my laptop. For once, I'm not. I left my badge on the desk. Nate watched me walk out. He didn't say a word. He looked like a man staring at the ruins of a castle he always assumed someone else would keep repairing. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, lighter. The kind of air you notice only when you've been breathing recycled office oxygen for too long. The next weeks moved fast. I formed a small consulting entity. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Just something legally clean, structurally sound, and mine. The client signed a preliminary letter of intent within days. Their legal team handled the heavy lifting. They didn't care about my company's size. They cared about results. A month later, we finalized the partnership under my new banner. The same deal I built. The same trust I earned. The same $134 million they tried to celebrate without me. Except now, it didn't belong to them. People like to imagine revenge as explosive. Doors slammed, voices raised, storms kicked up on purpose. But real revenge is quiet. It lives in your absence, not your noise. And when the company announced their quarterly report, the gap where the partnership was supposed to be said everything. I didn't gloat, didn't check their LinkedIns, didn't ask mutual contacts for updates. I didn't need to. All I needed was the silence. My new workspace is smaller, warmer, a single desk, a clean notebook, coffee the way I like it, not the burnt communal pot everyone pretends is fine. I answer messages from people who respect my time. I build things I get credit for. I leave the office when I'm done, not when someone else decides my day is over. Last week, I found that $1 check in a drawer I hadn't unpacked yet. I held it for a moment, smiled once, then dropped it in the shredder. It felt good, simple, final. They once told me that the check was symbolic. They were right. It symbolized exactly how they valued me. And walking away symbolized how much I finally valued myself. They gave me $1. I gave them a lesson worth far more than they could afford.